Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. I am talking about how to navigate anxiety and depression with your teenager. If you're watching your teenager struggle or slide into a dark place and you're feeling scared and completely lost at how to help them, this is the right place for you. I want to welcome you. My name is Allie Payne. I am a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach, and I've been working with parents and teens for 15 years now to help them end the painful disconnection, emotional blow-ups, and stressful silences by increasing mutual understanding and respect to build trust and healthy relationships. Today, I want to talk to you about this topic that is very personal to me. I'm nervous. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm feeling very nervous. And it's really important to me that I give the best information possible and help you to become your teenager's ally through better understanding of what they might be going through. I want to tell you, I've got my laptop here. I have a ton of notes. So I'm going to be looking at my notepad and my laptop because I have so much key information I want to share. I do need to say clearly, I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. What I am sharing with you today is my own personal experience with anxiety, raising a child who has diagnosed anxiety OCD, and years of study of the brain to better help him. As well as in supporting my son, I needed to look at myself and own my own anxiety. So there's a lot of personal experience. I just want to be really careful that today, this is not about diagnosing yourself or your teenager. However, I do encourage you to watch this with your teen. Have your teenager watch this. Everything I'm going to be sharing is appropriate for your teenager to watch. I hope that this helps open a better and new conversation with your teenager around mental health and what anxiety or depression is like for them and ways that you can best support them. All right, I am going to jump in. So in my experience, my mother has anxiety and OCD, although undiagnosed, to me, it is very, very clear. I was not born with anxiety. For me, I developed anxiety through trauma. By never knowing if I was going to be attacked emotionally or physically, it created massive anxiety for me around walking on eggshells. And then also when I did get things wrong, there was significant emotional and sometimes physical punitive action. And so that fear developed anxiety in me, which I still struggle with today, and best managing my brain. My son, however, my oldest son, he was born with anxiety. I knew that he was different from the time he was 18 months old. He was just not like other kids. He has anxiety and OCD, so he's more obsessive in some of his behaviors. And he was officially diagnosed at 8 years old. It was already getting out of control by 5 years old. He is now 20. So we talk about anxiety and mental health in our house all the time, every day. It's really normal for us. So I hope that this is going to normalize some of that for you and gives you also a little bit of context of where I'm coming from. Okay, let's talk about anxiety, what it is and what it isn't first. Excuse me. Okay, so I've pulled up the clinical definition here. So anxiety is not just worry. Worry is real. Worry is based in fear, as is anxiety. But worry is something that is temporary and goes kind of up and down. You might worry about your taxes. You might worry about a performance review at work. You might worry if your child is struggling at school or struggling in their personal life. Okay. But that doesn't mean they have anxiety. So here's what anxiety is. This is the clinical definition. Anxiety, people who struggle with anxiety have frequent and intense, excessive persistent, intrusive, negative thoughts. Okay? I hope that made sense to you. I'm just reading off my laptop here. Frequent and intense, excessive, intrusive, negative thoughts. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the brain first, okay? Our brains are wired for negativity. That's normal. That's primal. That was what kept you alive. It also is what got you off your butt to go make sure you hunted down your next meal. Literally living in fear is primal because that's how our brains are wired. In our emotional, our primal brains to live in fear. Nice, right? The other thing is that because of that, we have NAT, we have NATs. You have NATs in your brain. Negative automatic thoughts. Sorry, I always get an itchy nose when I go live. Negative automatic thoughts. Those are also normal. They're part of our brain. They're a historic part of our primal brains that kept us alive. Negative automatic thoughts. Now, here's the other thing I need you to understand is that your brain has approximately 40,000 thoughts per day, okay? Random thoughts out of somewhere, I don't know, random thoughts. But your intellectual brain, your prefrontal cortex can only process approximately 20 to 25% of those. So do you see what the odds are here? An anxious brain is more likely to capture the negative thoughts, negative random thoughts, than it is to say, nah, like, we don't need that. Like the one that tells you when you get in your car that you're going to have an accident and like tells you this whole big story that you're going to have an accident or you're going to get hurt or whatever. Those are negative automatic thoughts. That is normal. An anxious brain may have more of them, but more importantly, chooses to process out of all the thoughts, random thoughts your brain has in a day, an anxious brain will grab hold of the negative ones more. Okay. This is another point that I want you to bring up to you and to your teenager. You are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts do not identify who you are. So of all those 40,000 something thoughts running around there in a day, those aren't who you are as a person. They're a function of your brain feeding you a whole bunch of noise in the day, but it's not who you are. You are also not your feelings. Those are a physiological experience your body is having in a reaction to a stimulus. So when you can begin to separate who you are from the thoughts you're having, it can feel less like a David and Goliath situation, which is very common for teens, for when your lack of emotional intelligence, mature brain, is that it can feel like you are in your brain, your teenager is in their brain, and their thoughts and feelings, so they are David, and their thoughts and feelings are Goliath. And they're always losing. They're not winning. They're always feeling like they got to shrink down, and because it's so frightening with all of this barrage of negative thoughts and feelings coming at them. Especially, it's even more frightening when your teenager identifies with those and thinks that they define them somehow, and they don't. They don't. So we talk about this in our house all day, all the time. What are the stories your brain is telling you? What are the stories your brain is telling you? And sometimes they're very real. Sometimes it's very real. And sometimes I feel like David and the thought or the feeling is Goliath. Okay, that is what it is. But by realizing that it's a story and it's not who I am, I feel more empowered to tell my brain and tell that negative automatic thought or that story to screw off or other things, whatever you want to say. Okay? So that's one tool that we also use, is understanding that your brain tells you stories. Some of them are realistic, some of them are not. Most of them are negative. They don't define who you are, and you don't have to believe them. You don't have to believe those thoughts, okay? It doesn't always work, but it is one tool. All right. I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, let's talk about what anxiety feels like. Now, this can be extremely challenging for you as a parent if your teenager is struggling with anxiety and you do not have a felt experience of what anxiety is, which awesome. That's great. I'm happy for you. I sincerely am. But it can be more frustrating because you're looking at your teen who seems to be like believing the stories, identifying with them, and constantly succumbing to those negative thoughts, and they can't like get out from under them. You're like, what? Like, how hard is it? Just don't believe them. Like, just do not say that to your teenager. Well, just don't. Well, just don't. Okay, don't say that. Here's what it's like on the inside. Mentally, as I said, it's like feeling like David and the thoughts and it's the barrage of negative thoughts. So if you imagine a stereo system with a whole bunch of volume controls, it's like having the volume on your feelings, your sometimes stimulus. If you are a sensory anxiety looks different for every person. Anxiety comes in lots of different flavors, okay? My son and I, it's very sensory. So our smell, hearing, touch, visual volumes, controls, again, emotions, feelings, negative thoughts, and the volume control on every single one of those dials is turned to high, like volume 10. Out of 0 out of 10. The volume is constantly up. It's jacked. It's loud. It's like it just doesn't ever get quiet in there. It's really hard to get quiet. So it's busy in there. It is based in fear, anxiety, worry. It's based in fear. So there's a fear of not doing something, like something's bad is going to happen, not getting it right. There's a feeling of being trapped, like you can't escape it. So it's very fear-based, but the fear is constantly on, like constantly, to the point of fight or flight, which I'll get into it a little bit more in a second. So that's the physical, that's what it feels like in your brain, okay? Just in case you don't have a felt experience of it. In your body, the physical symptoms, very normal to have physical symptoms of anxiety, headaches or migraines, stomach aches, joint pain, all unexplainable by other medical professionals, faintness, blood pressure issues, eczema or rashes. My anxiety was so high when I was a teenager, plus hormones, that makes it extra special in there, that I had eczema all down these two fingers. It looked like I dipped them in red paint, and then all down my arm and my wrist. And when I moved and I went to get married, same, because more stress and moving to a different place, I had eczema, rashes, licking lips can be an anxious response. And if you live in Canada or somewhere dry, right, it gets all chapped. So licking lips is an anxious response. Picking at scabs, picking skin, those are all anxious responses in the body as a way to relieve some of that stress. And there are others, but those are just some of the physical symptoms, okay? This is literally an emotional, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here because I think that I missed a part. I did. Okay. So I just covered the physical symptoms. What happens in the brain is, because it is a fear-based, is essentially the brain is constantly in a triggered state, some form of triggered state of fear, fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, that's anxiety. So I'm going to give you the Daniel Siegel hand model of the brain again. Okay, so this is the brain stem. This is the amygdala, the emotional brain, the lizard brain, primitive brain. Okay, this is the intellectual brain, which normal safely houses the amygdala there, all nice and safe and covered, right? Okay, so here's part of the issue with the teen. The teen brain, this upper intellectual portion, is number one, it's going through the second and final growth phase in their lifetime. So it's growing, and better yet, it's also developing all new software to manage the new hardware at the same time. Fun. So the teenage brain, it's a little bit looser. This is why teenagers are already more prone to anger, frustration, defensiveness, because their amygdala is kind of raw. It's not fully protected, okay? So then you add anxiety to the picture. Now it's like the brain is hanging on, but see how the amygdala is kind of showing there? So it's like it's always in a semi-triggered state of fight or flight. And when it goes into full fight or flight, your intellectual brain is hijacked. It's literally offline. It's offline now, and now you are running from the amygdala, which happens often in anxiety, in outbursts, which I will talk about in a second. So I just want you to understand that your teenager's brain, because anxiety is based in fear, is already triggered just because of the adolescent brain growth phase, but anxiety does amplify that. Okay, on to page 2. Are you with me? If you're with me, if this is helpful, give me something in the comments here. If you're watching on Instagram, I so appreciate it. Give me a follow. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. Let me know. Oh, so good. Okay, I'm so glad. All right, so this is an emotional epidemic that I am seeing in teenagers. Literally. It is an epidemic that I am seeing in teenagers. Now, let me explain. Teenagers are lacking skills. This does not mean you're a bad parent, okay? You and I, if you're like me, were not raised in an environment where we learned healthy emotional regulation strategies, or even what the heck that meant. Huh? I sure didn't. So teenagers being raised in an era, the digital era, they're constantly connected. There's a barrage of things at them all the time. They are lacking the emotional regulation, emotional expression, intelligence skills to process that barrage that's going on for them. The teenage brain is already a very scary neighborhood to go in by yourself, and the lights aren't always on at night. So it's dangerous. Okay. It's a hood in there. So teenagers that I talk to every day are unregulated, nervous system, emotionally unregulated. Their nervous system is unregulated. They feel afraid and they feel trapped every day. Every single day. This is what they tell me. Okay. It is like being in a horror movie. Actually, a teenager told me this yesterday on a TikTok live. It is literally like living in a horror movie in there. But you don't know the plot. You don't know what's going to happen. Okay. Because of the barrage of negative automatic thoughts, that because they don't know that they're not their thoughts, they're not their feelings, they identify with them, they believe the stories their brain is telling them, because nobody's telling them that you don't have to believe what your brain tells you. Your brain tells you random crap all day long. Nobody tells them this. And it is because they have no way of processing, expressing, or regulating. It is like having a large dog crate, and your teenager is living in that large dog crate with a lock on the door. They feel trapped, terrified, scared, and alone. Again, this doesn't make you a bad parent. I just need you to understand what your teenager is feeling locked inside there. Okay? So, and I am going to give you tips to help you and your teenager cope this. I just need to talk through a load of notes here. Okay, it is normal, as I mentioned, for your teenager, because of their brain, anxiety will increase the experience of anger outbursts or increased frustration. Because your teenager is already living in a space of fear of something. That's what anxiety is. Fear of not getting it right, fear of failing, fear of being laughed at, fear of comparison, fear of judgment, which the teenage brain is already highly susceptible to. So fun. Anxiety can increase their susceptibility to anger and fear, and it will have those outbursts probably come out at you. Okay, so building emotional safety is critical. I do have a previous video called what if when your teenager blames you for everything, and helping your teenager manage anger. Those 2 videos, you might want to look those up, but I'm going to give you a couple more tips in here, okay? Anxiety can also increase exhaustion because the emotional brain is so raw all the time and living in that state of fear, fight, or flight because of anxiety, that they may also present as more tired, exhausted, which is also a function of the teenage brain. So it just amplifies that they're tired a lot, okay? And then they have an even harder time processing all of the stimulus and sensory overload, okay? So anxiety, there's a couple things that happen in the brain. I'm not going to go over all of the detail, but here's one thing that I learned about myself and helped my son with in the years that I've spent studying the brain and how anxiety affects mood. So serotonin is kind of like a happy hormone. Serotonin is necessary for mood balance, okay? Couple things that can happen in the brain is, first of all, your teen or your brain may be lacking serotonin. Do not self-diagnose. Do not use Dr. Google, please. Okay? If you get help from a qualified medical professional or a mental health professional before you go diagnosing anything. Your brain or your teenage brain may be lacking serotonin. Now, here's the cool part of how serotonin works in the brain. Your brain has Venus flytraps. You know the plant that's like a Venus flytrap, and it's like open and then the fly lands in there and then super slowly closes before the fly gets out. Okay, so your brain has like Venus flytraps in it, and you've got serotonin, little serotonin like releasers, little plant growers. Okay, so it could be that your brain has a normal level of serotonin, but what happens is when the serotonin is released, the timing of the receptor is off. So your serotonin, I just lost the name of it. The serotonin molecule, thank you. The serotonin molecule goes to be released, and the serotonin receptor closes before it gets there. So that can be one reason, okay? It can be that your serotonin is a normal level in your brain and it's released and it goes into the serotonin receptor, but the receptor's not closing. So it's not grabbing onto it. There's lots of different reasons why it can happen. I'm just trying to give you some context. Again, do not self-diagnose. I cannot say that enough. Okay, let's go to solutions, shall we? Is anybody else tired? I'm tired and I'm nervous. Whew. Okay, your teen needs you as an ally. They don't need you to be driving for answers that they don't have. So your teen, here's what doesn't work for your teenager. Your teen is presenting as anxious, and it doesn't seem too worrisome at this point, so you're going to look at ways that you can help your teenager to manage this without medical intervention. Great. And you are asking your teen, well, what are you afraid of? Like, why are you anxious? What are you afraid of? What, why, how? Those questions are not helpful because your teenager can't necessarily answer those. And the more you drive home trying to get an answer with those questions, I promise you, your teenager will feel even less safe around you. They will feel shamed, judged, and criticized, even if that's not your intention. Even if your intention is to build understanding to be the best support you can be. So please, do not drill and drive home questions like, well, what are you afraid of? Just tell me what you're afraid of so I can help you. Well, why do you do that? Well, how come you do that? Stop it. Stop. I understand that the adult brain is wired to need answers to increase understanding. This is not something that you're going to get those from. Now, if you're also trying to get those answers because you are a rescuer or a fixer, welcome. I'm a recovering fixer as well. Fixing rescuer, overcompensator. Welcome. If you are driving to get those answers so that you can fix or help your teenager support through this process to heal them, you are on the wrong path. Put down your pitchfork and back down. Just come on back. What I'm sharing with you today are not ways to heal anxiety. So please don't kid yourself. What I hope I'm helping you to do today is to understand the experience of anxiety, to be the best ally and support you can, so your teenager can best manage their anxiety. You are not going to heal or fix it. So just back down from that journey right now. Okay, you've been given warning. All right, I do want to tell you what your teenager needs again is for you to be an ally, okay? So think about this as you riding shotgun in their car. Like when you're riding shotgun in a car, right? If someone's unsure of where they're going and you're in the passenger seat, you can say like, oh, maybe take a right turn up here. I think it's shorter, or there's construction a little bit ahead. Let's go this route. It'll be faster. Or, oh, there's a pothole there. Look out. You can suggest from the passenger seat, but you're not driving. Your teenager needs you to collaborate. That's what it looks like to be an ally. Okay? They want you to be an ally and collaborate. They want you to because this is about safety. The way to reduce fear is to build safety. So they want you to do things with them. This is not a video that you're going to take to your teenager and say, you need to just do these things. Just do what this lady's saying and then you'll feel better. Do not. Please do not. I guarantee you, your teenager won't do it. They won't do it. This is not about telling your teenager what to do. This is about doing it with them. Collaborate. Listen. You are riding shotgun. You are not driving that car. I used to, when my son, this is probably at 9 or 10. We had some really rough years. Really rough years. My son, again, he was diagnosed at 8, but he presented as anxious by the time he was 5. When my son was from 8 to 11, 7 to 9, those 3 years, it was absolutely awful. He had 3-hour anxiety attacks every Saturday and every Sunday. So basically, we couldn't leave the house or plan anything, and my youngest child was raised by the neighbors. I've talked to him about that. Fortunately, he's an extrovert and felt like it was fun. He didn't feel abandoned. My husband and I tried desperately to figure out what an anxiety attack was. We were walking through this blind. We'd never been through this. We were using all the resources that we could get and trying to just best support my son. At that time, we did not realize that he was having these 3-hour anxiety attacks on the weekends because of a slow build of overstimulation during the week, just through school. He's also an introvert. And again, an introvert with all that stimulus, even though he liked school, relatively speaking, it was a slow build because we didn't have the skills or the tools to help him to process and release that stimulus each day. So it just built up by the weekend. It was awful. And I'm not going to tell you that the rest of his school years were any fun either. It was a nightmare for him and for us. It was absolutely awful. One of the things that I used to do with my son every night, because he had trouble sleeping, which I will talk about in a second, he had trouble sleeping. So I was exhausted. I was absolutely at the end of my rope and I was exhausted, and this gorgeous little creature would come to me and he's like, Mommy, I can't sleep. My brain is going crazy. I can't sleep. So I would do this with him in his room every night, literally almost falling asleep myself. I was so tired. We would do breathing and stretching. So we would start at our toes and we would flex our toes really tight, and then we would point our toes up to our nose, or like pick our nose with our toes. That's what I used to say. And then we would point our toes, and then we would relax our toes. And then we would do it twice. Okay. And this whole time we're breathing. Then we would do ankles. Then we would do calves and so on, knees, thighs, butt cheeks. We would do abs. Then we would do chest, arms, eyebrows, face, all the way up. Okay. And we would be breathing at the same time. Slow breaths in through the nose, slow breaths out through the nose. Okay. And this would help calm him to sleep. Now listen, I could have easily said, well, just do your stretching. Do your stretching and your breathing. Not helpful. He's already in a state of fear. He needs to feel safe. Now, his love language is not touch. So I did not touch him while I was doing this. His love language is words of affirmation and also quality time. So that's why he needed me to collaborate and do this with him. Don't tell, do with. Okay. Literally, I know I was exhausted, but that is one of the things that helped. Now, anxiety gets worse at night. I literally did not sleep last night. I am so tired. Here's why. The anxious brain, when the cognitive, intellectual processing part of the brain starts to shut down, get quiet at night when you're tired, okay, because melatonin rises in the body and it starts to lower your brain processing function and etc. What happens is it lets the emotional brain run a little cray-cray. Whee! Free rein! Let's go! The emotional brain is where your experiences are stored. And so, with the intellectual processing part shutting down for the evening, it lets the emotional brain sometimes ramp up. With less regulation, less inherent regulation from the intellectual brain available to tell it to be like, hey now. So the emotional brain runs crazy. So it winds up at night, especially when, and this is so common for teenagers, I'm hearing so much for teenagers. They're not sleeping at night because they have no way, they're trapped in their brains. They have no way of unregulating, of regulating their nervous system, processing and releasing emotions, okay? So that's what happens at night. That's normal. Unfortunate, but normal. So this is why regulating is so important, because you're only managing the anxiety. We're not here to heal or fix it. I do want to say this to you. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. I literally spent years crying my eyes out, having owned and realized my own anxiety and taken ownership of the lineage of anxiety and OCD I come from. Thinking that because when my child was born, I didn't have that awareness yet, even though I was a legacy breaker from the beginning, I still had my lack of awareness around my own anxiety and OCD. And so I've cried myself for years that I have broken my child. I did this to him. This was my fault. I don't know about you, but it's pretty hard to find workable solutions when you are beating yourself up because you think this is your fault. This is not your fault, okay? My husband's family also has anxiety. Like literally my oldest son just got the double dose. It just is what it is. He didn't break him. It's not his fault, okay? So let yourself off the hook a little bit, please. Because the more you blame yourself for this, the more you're also going to be in that seat of trying to fix it. And that will not help. So don't do it. All right. I also want to say I have 2 previous blogs that I wrote about this, about my son's journey and his diagnosis, as well as how to support your teenager through anxiety. If you're looking at my website on your phone, alipayne.com, you have to like slide it over to the right a little bit, like, well, put your thumb and go to the left. Slide the website over slightly because my website's being redone. And there's like a magnifying glass, like the little magnifying glass symbol. I tested it this morning. If you hit that magnifying glass symbol, or on your desktop, the magnifying glass over on the right-hand side, if you hit that and you type in mental health, it will bring up those two articles. The two previous articles that I wrote about this that has recommendations that I'm going to share with you, as well as top apps to help your teenager to regulate and process and calm their brain. Okay, so mental health, if you can't find them, just send me a DM at alipayne on Instagram and I will get them to you. Okay, here's what I do to manage anxiety. Here's my managing anxiety tools. Number 1 is breathing. Just breathing. Breathing is the fastest, easiest way to regulate your nervous system. Because remember, anxiety has got the nervous system slightly hijacked all the time in a state of fear, or maybe fight or flight as well. So deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth sometimes is easier, but in and out through the nose is best. 5 counts in. Now, in an anxious state or in a panic attack, okay, you can't do 5 counts in and 5 counts out because your breathing has already gone offline. So you can start with 3 counts, start just 2 counts, anything you can to focus on your breath and slow it down. But if you can do 2 counts in and 2 counts out and then make it 3 in and 3 out and get to 5, that will help in an anxiety or panic attack, okay? Breath is the number 1 thing. The other thing you can do with breath, it's called box breathing. Once you teach this to your teen and do it with them, box breathing, if they are a tactile person, they can take a pen and paper and actually draw a box. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts exhale, 4 counts hold. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts exhale, 4 counts hold. Draw a box on a piece of paper. That's something they can do in class, okay? If they feel anxiety rising, just take their pencil and the paper, start drawing the box and breathing. It's a very tactile visual tool to help them to slow their breathing, which regulates the nervous system, okay? So it brings their brain out of that really higher level of hijack. Okay, that's the first level that I do. Number 2, so these are building on each other. Okay, so now that level 1 was breathing. So now including breathing, if that's not working or it feels like really big, level 2 is I also do a technique that I put on my stories this morning called tapping. Emotional freedom technique, EFT. This point here on the hand, this soft squishy part, okay? Outside, it's called the karate chop point. It's kind of in the middle between your wrist bone and your baby knuckle there, right here, really soft, squishy part, is that you can tap that part, either 1 finger, 2 finger on your hand. It doesn't matter. Yes, Safina, you know what I'm talking about. You can do this on either hand. Doesn't matter. Okay. Your body's symmetrical. As you're doing your 5 counts in and out, be tapping on just tap, slowly be tapping on this point. This is an acupressure point on the body, and what it does is to help calm the amygdala by lowering the adrenaline and cortisol response in the brain that is creating the fear, fight, or flight experience, okay? So this is, now, the cool part about this is that your child can do this under their desk. This is very discreet. You can do this, right? My hands are kind of between my legs, leaning forward under my desk. Nobody knows I'm doing this. Your friends don't have to know. It doesn't have to be a big scene. Okay? My son used to do this in front of his friends with his hands down low, just lightly tapping over lunch when he was with his friends at lunch if he felt like he was triggered or in an anxious state. Nobody knew he was doing slow breathing. Nobody knew he was doing this. Okay? So it can be very discreet tools. Because when you're already anxious, the thought of people knowing what you're doing to manage anxiety That is terrifying. It's like everyone's going to know, everyone's going to stare at you, so it needs to be discreet. Okay? If that's not working, or I feel like my anxiety is still rising, I go to level 3. Remember, these are building on each other. So we have breathing plus tapping. The third stage for me is I either say out loud or in my head, I am safe. 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 Now that doesn't mean you feel safe. Like your teen's like, but I don't feel safe. I feel wildly unsafe. That's what anxiety is. Don't you get it? I know. You're telling your brain, because remember your brain is feeding you lies, feeding you stories all the time. You are telling your brain that you are safe, even if that's not how it feels. So I understand that there can be a contradiction there. You can do that in your head. You don't have to say it out loud. Nobody has to know you're doing this, okay? I do this while I'm driving because I can do this on my steering wheel or on the gear shift, and I can be breathing and saying to myself, I am safe. I am safe, okay? You can do that if I feel my anxiety rising for some reason, because I don't always know why. I don't always know what the stimulus is. That's the problem when you have a buildup of unprocessed feelings and emotions and everything and has nowhere to go. It will pop out at the least opportune time. And that's why asking your teenager why or what triggered it or what happened is irrelevant. They don't always know. They might know, but they're probably not going to know in the beginning. Okay, so just don't. It's not a helpful question. Okay, so that's level 3. Level 4. This is not something that you probably can do at school, but this is something that your teenager can do at home and you can do with them because you're doing this with them. Am I clear? You're doing this with them. Feet up the wall. It is a yoga pose. Imagine this is the wall. These are your feet. You are, yes, I did this yesterday on TikTok. Okay, so this is your feet. Okay, this is your face. Your face in the ceiling, laying on your back with your feet up the wall. Feet up the wall. That is the pose that you do. Feet up the wall is a yoga pose that is fantastic for reducing anxiety because in fight or flight, what your body does is it removes blood flow from your core organs, your torso, and it sends the blood flow out to your limbs, to your extremities, so that you can run. You can get the heck out of there. Go! That's what fight or flight is. That is why one of the physical symptoms is feeling faint, because your blood flow is all out at your extremities, okay? So level 4, put your feet up the wall, lay on your back, stare at the ceiling, but you got to do the other 3 things too. So you're doing your breathing, laying on your back, staring at the ceiling, doing your breathing, you're doing your tapping, and you're saying, with our eyes closed, eyes open, doesn't matter, I am safe. I am safe. At least 5 slow inhales, 5 slow exhales. Whew, I can already feel it in my body. When I do this, I get tingly fingers and tingly toes. So that is my 5 steps to relieving anxiety. Now, if your teenager is in an anxiety or panic attack right now in this moment, they are already hijacked, okay? Their brain, their critical thinking brain is offline. So don't expect it to show up, okay? If you have built enough safety, emotional safety with your teenager, you can say, look at me, just breathe. Let's breathe. Let's breathe. Because it's called co-regulation. You are co-regulating with them. Breathe with me. Just breathe. So the science behind that is super powerful. There's one of them is heart math, co-regulation. It's fantastic. I'm not going to go into detail with that, but you're co-regulating. You are helping them grab on to something that feels safe. Now, only if you have permission from your teenager. I can't express this enough. Only if you have permission. You can take their hand and you can do this on the side of their hand. Only if you have permission, okay? You can also say to them, you are safe. You are safe. You can do that as well to help them co-regulate. You can do legs up the wall with them as well, okay? This isn't about telling, I cannot say this enough. It's not about telling your teenager what to do. This is about helping collaborate and be an ally. Now, some of these things you're going to need to do first. Because if you're like, let's do this together, they're like, what the, like, you're weird. And you're like, yeah, there was this weird lady on Instagram. She's banana crazy, but let's try it. Or you let them watch this video, okay? You have to model this. Your teen needs you to lead the way. They don't have these coping skills. They don't have this level of strategic thinking to do this for themselves. They need you to model it. So you start. That's how it happens. You start and let them see you do it. Let them see you do it while you are watching a TV show or while you are at night. Start doing it and they'll be like, what are you doing? Be like, oh, well, I learned this thing to help me calm my nervous system and it helps me sleep. So yeah, so you have to lead the way, okay? You cannot expect your teenager to do this banana weird cray stuff because they already think we're weird as a parent when you're not prepared to do it first, okay? So model it. It could take a month for you to model this before they're like, maybe, okay. Now, ultimately, I want your teenager doing these, those 4 steps every morning because it takes 21 seconds to do 5 deep breaths. 21 seconds. Okay, maybe 30. Okay, 30 seconds. Before they leave for school, that's the ultimate goal. Before they leave for school to do those 4 things. When they get home from school, take 30 seconds. Do those 4 things. Again, in those 2 articles I already wrote, there's my top recommendation, my top 5 apps, meditation apps they can use as well. And do it once before they go to bed. So the ultimate would be if your teenager can do this 3 times a day. Okay, that will help to regulate their nervous system. Now, slow walking outside also helps balance hormones. That's written in those other 2 articles. I want to let you know there are also a number of natural supplements that you can get to support your teenager in their brain. Do not do this on your own. Please ask either a medical professional, a naturopath is what I use. I studied all of Dr. Amen's books. Can someone write Dr. Amen, like amen? Amen, Dr. Amen in the comments. I literally read every one of his books, and he is a very renowned psychologist, who does brain scans. He believes in natural supplements. I read about all of his supplements. I worked with my naturopath and I helped, second try, I was lucky, got a combination that really helped my son. Thank you, Nikki. That helped my son. And so my son still to this day takes those supplements and yes, they make a difference. He still has ups and downs, but the ups aren't so high and the lows aren't so low. So there are available supplements. Okay, last and final point that is critical on page 3. Here is the last thing, and I cannot express this clearly enough. I almost wish I didn't leave it to the end. I need you to start expressing emotions with your teenager. Help them to not feel so trapped in that cage that is their brain, that's full of all of these developing complex emotions they have no way to process. And then they can't sleep and all of these other things. Here's how you do it. I have put a link in my bio, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the link below this video. The Feeling Wheel. The link in my bio says free downloads. Click on free downloads. It says The Feeling Wheel. Just download it. Download it. Get it. Print it off. Put it on your fridge. For real. Here's what you do. You leave it on your fridge, okay, for conversation. You bring it to the dinner table every single night. Every single night. You bring it to the dinner table. And everyone gets to choose one feeling. There are 72 different emotions, emotional feelings on that feeling wheel. You pick one. Everyone gets to express one feeling they had that day. Critical is, because you're building safety, it is not up for judgment, comment, or question. Period. It is, thank you, thanks for sharing. That was courageous. Thank you for sharing. That's it. I don't care how curious you are. Zip it. Second, and you and your partner, everybody plays in, but if someone wants to pass, that is okay. Because why? Because you're building safety. Second option is you share what was the situation around that feeling. Like what was happening when you had that feeling. Like I was with my friends at school and I heard someone say something, or you might say my coworker did this, or my boss said this, or I was driving to work, or whatever it was. Okay. Also, not up for comment, question, or judgment. Period. Why? Because you're building safety. So unless your teenager wants to share more, then you don't say anything. That's it. You're done. Here's what Dr. Brené Brown's recent study shows, and you are going to get Atlas of the Heart. Write that in the comments, please. Atlas of the Heart. This is her new book that just came out. Here's what her recent studies show, or actually her 20 years of research, no kidding, shows. The book is a description based on her research of, I think, 80 something different emotional experiences and feelings. The average person can only clearly articulate and express 5, up to 5 people, 5. And here is what she's showing. That is what keeps your teenager trapped. Because unless you can effectively and correctly name and express your feelings as they truly are, you cannot process, heal, or release them. If you cannot effectively name, express your feelings, you cannot process, heal, or release them. And that is why your teenager is trapped. And that is the number one thing that she is showing is going to build overwhelm and anxiety in their brain. This is a game for the whole family to play. And she has said, Dr. Brené Brown has said that Atlas of the Heart is a book for family. I implore you, I beg you, please start talking about feelings at the dinner table. Everybody plays in. Make talking about feelings and sharing about feelings safe and make it normal. Because that is the cork on the bottle to helping your teenager navigate mental health, where you are managing it best on a daily, regular basis. We're not looking for the emergency inhaler like asthma. We're not waiting for the anxiety attacks and the panic attacks to happen. That's not management. We're using the daily inhaler, the one that keeps you from having the emergencies. Know what I'm saying? This is a daily practice, and your teenager is scared, alone, and desperate for you to come and play this with them. Even if they tell you you're weird and they don't want you to do it, keep modeling this. Please, I beg you. The messages I'm getting on the daily from teenagers who are going down a slippery slope and to the point where they are cutting and doing a lot of other self-harm things and questioning whether or not they should be here. This is an epidemic. They need your help. I want to thank you so much for being here. I know today was a long one. If you have any other questions or concerns, please message me on Instagram at Allie Payne, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe, leave me a comment. I will be sure to get back to you. I hope that this was helpful. I want to thank you again so much for your time. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, but I will be here again next Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, talking all about parenting teens. Bye, everybody.